Section 10 of Strangers at Lisconnel by Jane Barlow. This recording is in the public domain. Section 10. But 'deed now it was the quare contrivin' we had after he'd come home, and where he'd been but off down to Drumroe, gettin' her an elegant big teapot for a keepsake. So the sorra a stim of it in course could she see, and I done me best biddin' her look at the grand gilt handle and the wreath of pink roses on it, and she'd say the same thing after me. But sure it no ways very easy to fall into an admiration of a teapot you've never set eyes on, and I misdoubt the poor lad thought she wasn't so much pleased with it as he expected. And then he'd be walkin' in and out and axin' for this and that he was to put in his bundle, and she could only be tellin' him where to look for them, instead of readyin' them for him herself. And the pair of socks she'd promised him she couldn't get to finish. Real fretted she was wid it all. Howsomever, one way or the other we made a shift, till poor Felix went off in the grey of the mornin' wid ne'er a notion of anything. Says he to her, "You'll be seein' me steppin' in again one of these days." And says she, "Ay, will I, as sure as I'll see the sun shinin'." So he conceded she was well enough content, but the two of them was thinkin' different things. Ne'er a word of it we said to anybody before Felix was gone, or else somebody 'ud have been safe to have told him, for there's plenty of people couldn't be goin' about without tellin' everything they hear any more than a wasp could fly without buzzin' its wings. And then we got the doctor to her, but he couldn't do e'er a hand's turn. Sure what could anybody do agin the lightnin', that's a sort of miracle, you may say, unless it was wid another one. And I dunno, has people any call to be settin' themselves up to try do them?" said Mrs. Brian. "We'd better leave the like to them that understands the nature of such things." "Arrah, I should suppose we'd a right to be tryin' whatever we get the chance to," said Theresa, "and that's little enough, the Lord knows. Plenty of things there is keep up out of the reach of our meddlin' wid them." "Ay, bedad, or else it's the quare regulatin' we'd be givin' them now and agin, we would so," said Ody regretfully. "Och, but there's an odd few good jobs I'd give more than a trifle to be puttin' me hand to this minute if I could get a hould of them. And that's the way it is, I'm afeard, wid the lightnin' blindin'," said Theresa. "Howanever, up at Laraghmena we'd ha' done the best we could for her. If she'd ha' been content to have stayed there, we'd ha' contrived among us all to keep her well enough. But not a bit of her would, for all we could do or say. She wouldn't be a burden on the neighbours, she said. You see she's proud in her mind, the creature, that's what it is, goodness help her." "And when a body has that sort of a notion," said Ody, "you might as easy crack an egg inwards as get it out of their head." "So that's the way of it," said Theresa. "But if you could be tellin' me whether it's wrong I done or right, you know more than meself. Felix 'ud be for killin' me if he knew, that's certain, and small blame to him I was thinkin' part of the while comin' along. For bad work there's apt to ha' been, sure enough, in anything that ends in landin' a body in the Union." The blind woman in her corner across the hearth seemed to have caught the last word, for she abruptly said, Ay, it's there I'm goin', and the first of the Morroghs iver went on the rates, or the Conroys either. But I'm not takin' their name along wid me. Troth no, sorra the Ellen Morrough will they find in it." "Sure not at all, woman dear," said Theresa. "Why, Mrs. Doyne, it's great work the two of us had this day comin' along the road, plannin' a fine name for Mrs. Morrough to have in the Union, for she says it's none any dacint poor people own she'll be bringin' into it. So we've settled she's to be Mrs. Skeffington Yelverton. That's an iligant soundin' one, isn't it, ma'am?" Everybody expressed admiration and a forlorn glimmer of complacency at the arrangement passed over even the sorrowful countenance of Mrs. Skeffington Yelverton herself, as she sat in her ragged old wisp of a shawl. She was holding it under her grand new Delft teapot, whose beauties she should never see, though by this time much fingering had made her familiar with the outlines of its raised pink-rosed wreath. Then Theresa Joyce said, "We ought to be steppin' on wid ourselves if we're to get to Duffclane before dark. The evenin's took up a bit. I see the sky there turnin' like goulden glass agin the windy pane." But the neighbours protested against their setting forward again, and it was agreed that they should sleep the night at the Guilfoyles'. When this point had been decided, Mrs. Morrough said, "Would that be the sea, the rustlin' I hear outside there?" Upon this people looked ruefully at her and at each other, as if the question had given them a glimpse into the darkness in which she was sitting. "Ah, no, ma'am," said Mrs. Doyne, "that's only the sedge leaves in the wind round the big pool just back of the house. Few days of the year there is, summer or winter, but there'll be shush shooin' that way. A dreary sort of noise it is to my mind. I do be tired listenin' to it in the night sometimes." "Sure there's ne'er a drop of sea water nearer us, ma'am, than the place you're after quittin' out of," said Judy Ryan. "It's the quare whillahaloo it 'ud have to be risin' before we hear it that far." "Well, well," said the blind woman, "yous are the very lucky people, I'm thinkin', all of yous, that see the shinin' of the sun, and live beyond the sound of the sea." Her remark was followed by a short silence, during which her hearers were, perhaps, questing for consolatory rejoinders rather than congratulating themselves upon their own luckiness. It was Big Anne who broke the pause, saying, with the best of intentions, "Ah, sure, ma'am dear, please God, you won't be so, and we won't be so," a sentiment which apparently did not meet with the approval of Ody Rafferty, as he frowned bushily at her, and said in a testy undertone, "Musha, good gracious, woman, what talk have you out of you at all?" Just at this moment sounds, the nature of which could not easily be mistaken, rose up close by. Shouts and laughter and thumps and trampling of feet. People who ran quickly to the door were in time to see a knot of youths fall confusedly out of the house over the way, the Quigleys, obviously, to judge by their subsequent proceedings, for the purpose of continuing a scuffle with ampler elbow room. But it was only for a very brief space that their wrestling and skirmishing among the puddles held anybody's attention. That was speedily diverted to the far more extraordinary and astonishing behaviour of their visitor, Mrs. Morrough, for she suddenly sprang up off her chair, exclaiming, "Saints above, it's Paddy! That's Paddy's voice! Him that I haven't set eyes on for 9 years next Easter. And there's Felix yellin' too. The both of them's come back, glory be to God." And so saying, out of the house she ran, and across the road as straight as a dart, she who not an hour before had been led gropingly in, and would have put her foot among the glowing hearth sods if her guides had not pulled her away. The neighbours could at first look on in only mute amazement, but in any case the two boys and she were for some time so intricately entangled that any attempt to elicit any explanation would have been futile. When at last questions and answers were possible, no very lucid account of the matter was forthcoming. To the many voices that demanded, "Is it seein' you are, woman alive? Is it seein' you are?" All Mrs. Morrough could answer was, "Ay, bedad am I, and as well as ever I done in me life, praise be to goodness. Sure, I dunno what way it was, but me sight came back to me all of a flash, the same as it went, just the very minute I was hearin' the lads shoutin'. Och, Paddy avic, but you're the grand man growin', and Felix, och now to be seein' you again, and everything else as clear as clear. It's meself's the lucky woman this day, glory be to God and Mary." In short, the marvellous restoration of her sight is to this day a miracle, very freshly in the remembrance at Lisconnel and Laraghmena, where the inhabitants know little about paralyzed optic nerves, and might perhaps continue to wonder none the less, even if they knew more. Beside it, the unexpected reappearance of the two young Morroughs seemed almost a commonplace incident, though Paddy's fine new suit and gold watch chain were indeed very exceptional things at Lisconnel. His story ran that he had prospered highly of late out in California, having made enough to set him up grandly on a good bit of land in the old country, and give Felix a fair start, and keep the old mother in comfort all the rest of her life. With what objects in view, they had landed at Queenstown, he and his wife, a girl belonging to very respectable, decent people in the county of Wicklow. So next mornin', walkin' along the quay, who should I see but me gentleman there, and another chap along with him, and both of them lookin' as wild as if they'd been caught. And says I to Sally, "You bet that's Felix from our place at home," and right I was, and just slick in time to stop him goin' on board. Paddy had then left his wife with her family in Wicklow, where he had seen a promising farm, and he and Felix were now on their way to fetch their mother thither. "And it's in the quare consternation you'd ha' been," said Theresa Joyce, "if you'd landed up at Laraghmena and found her quit out of it the way she was." "And that would ha' happened us," said Felix, "if it hadn't been for young Dan Ryan in there just now passin' the remark that we couldn't expect Father Martin to be sendin' us notices all the way to the County Cork, and supposin' I'd very belike missed the right day for the steamer be reason of it. For if we hadn't got fightin' and tumblin' out of the house, you might aisy ha' gone along wid yourselves and never known we were in the place at all. 'Twas great luck entirely." Fortune, in truth, had seemingly taken Mrs. Morrough and her affairs into the highest favour. Even the luck insurance of a trivial loss was not wanting to her, as in her hasty exit she had dropped her new teapot, which broke into many pieces on Mrs. Doyne's floor, so that, as has been said, she never beheld it in its beauty. But the very skies had cleared above her head, swept by a waft of wind that scattered the clouds faster and further than a dreft of withered leaves, and the sinking sun broadened in splendour before the eyes that had lost sight of him through 10 interminable days. The wet stones on the road glistened like jewels, and the shallowest pools between them held unfathomed deeps of blue, when the Morroughs set off for Laraghmena, where they intended to sleep the night and bid their friends farewell. "And if it's themselves won't be in the fine astonishment when they set eyes upon you, woman dear," said Theresa Joyce. "For if you'd been 20 years away travellin' the world crooked and straight, you couldn't ha' come back a diff'rint crathur from what you were, and we settin' out this woful mornin'. Little notion you had what was comin' to you, and it all the while runnin' up your road, so to speak, like the sun racin' the shadows on a windy day. 'Deed now, I'd be goin' along wid you to hear what they'd say to you, but I'm old, you see, and every step I've tramped I have the feel of it in every bone in me body. So I'll stop this night up at Brian's. And bedad, ma'am, it's well off you are, if you've the feel of nothin' worse in them," said the querulous voice of old Peter Sheridan, whose acquaintances describe him as being "terrible gathered up with the rheumatism this great while." So great, in fact, that everybody except himself has by this time become accustomed to his condition. For the most part, however, they were rather pleased faces that watched the three strangers out of sight, the last long beams from the sunset making blink the eyes of nearly all Lisconnel. The west dispread its fiery golden bloom wider every moment as the swelling scarlet disc wheeled lower, burning with orbed flame a hollow path through the kindled haze. One laggard cloud, a great soft nest of snow, drifted into the heart of it and out of it again, flushed and glistening, and sailed on, a radiant shape, to meet and eclipse the misty white ghost moon, faint and dim in the east. Far away over the level bog the light was stealing about in streams, like water spilt on a floor. "Well now, I declare," said Mrs. Brian, "it does one's heart good to see a bit of luck like that happenin' to a body." "Aye does it," said Judy Ryan, "the crathur to be gettin' back her sight just at the right minute of time to see her son comin' home to her. Sure now, one might take a plisure in plannin' such a thing if one had the managin' of it." "Ah dear, but I wish somebody would be conthrivin' a bit of good luck for us then," said Mrs. Quigley. "Maybe there's plenty more where that's comin' from," suggested Brian Kilfoyle hopefully. "It's apt to stay there then," quoth Mrs. Quigley, "for any signs I can see." "Aye, ma'am, that's me own notion," said Peter Sheridan bitterly. "I'm thinkin' we'll have to be goin' there wheriver it is, and lookin' after it for ourselves if it's good luck we're a wantin'." "And I dunno what better we could be doin'," said Theresa Joyce, "than goin' where it is when we get the chance." "Aye, there's the last of the sun," she said, as a quivering red shaft shot up suddenly and trembled away into nothing on the air. "Aye, for sure he goes down a great way off out on the bog. The crathur would ha' been plased to see it. 'Deed no, I dunno anythin' better we could be doin' than goin' after our good luck." So all through that gathering twilight Mrs. Morrough and her two sons were journeying away with their high fortune to Laraghmena. They were still on the road long after the clear moon had filled the air with shimmering silver and sent their shadows stretching darkly far over the frosted grass, but Lisconnel had gone to seek for the time being its good luck in the land of dreams. End of Section 10. Recording by James Carson. End of Strangers at Lisconnel by Jane Barlow.